Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. All the characters in the story are over 18 years old. My private investigator told me that Steve was a man of habit. So I joined the happy hour evening party at a swanky bar in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, where Steve frequented. At 5:15, I knew he would join his friends within the next few minutes. I wasn't nervous about the confrontation that was going to start soon after his arrival, or about the new direction of my life, because I came to terms with my new reality very quickly. In less than a week. I have to admit, a glass of Knob Creek bourbon helped me relax. I was looking at the bar while the living room around me was filling up with people when I looked in the long mirror behind the rows of drinks and noticed Steve. He joined his friends, and the waitress had already placed a tall glass of beer on the table in front of him. Steve is a big and handsome man. I would guess that he is 10 years younger than my 52 years. His height does not exceed 180 centimeters. He is fit and looks athletic. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, and a classic, chiseled appearance. I could understand why my wife, Lori, was attracted to him during her frequent business trips to the corporate office in Charlotte. My personal detective was able to understand the basics. Steve joined the company 2 years earlier. He was the director of the marketing department and held a position at about the same level as Lori in the sales department. They worked on many projects together and often visited clients. I did not hire a private investigator to investigate thoroughly because the main evidence was provided by Steve and Lori themselves. After finishing my drink, I ordered a second one and paid the bill. I crossed the room and stood next to their table, looking at the 5 men and 2 women who made up Steve's company. "Hi, Steve. I'm Chris Harrington, Lori's husband. I hope we can find a private place to talk." Steve looked confused at first. There was a smile on his face, but his eyes expressed deep concern. "I'm Chris. Hi. I'm glad to meet you. What are you doing in Charlotte?" "I came here to talk to you alone." "Well, I'm here with friends. Do you think we could meet another time?" I looked around the room. It was filling up quickly and nodded towards an empty booth at the end of the hall. "All I need is 10 minutes. I'll take that booth over there." As I walked away from Steve's table, I saw him finish the rest of his beer and order more. When he joined me a few minutes later, he looked worried. "I can't imagine why you flew to North Carolina to talk to me. It would be much easier to call. I wanted to meet a man who had an affair with my wife." My quick and to-the-point response left Steve speechless before he could respond. It's not what you think." I laughed. "That's exactly what I think. I was able to access the cloud server where you and Lori hid the video. Now I have copies of all 16. I didn't think Steve could have been more surprised. "Do you have these copies?" Instead of answering, I asked, "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know." "Exactly. The 4 of us were on a business trip to Allied Corporation. In Cleveland, I think it was a little over a year ago. Lori's computer ran out of battery, so I lent her my computer. I do not know how it happened, but she found a fetish site that I often visit. Well, Steve, it shows how stupid I am. I thought the affair lasted from 6 to 8 months. Steve lowered his head. "For a while, it did not come to physical intimacy. Lori was intrigued, so we talked and emailed about it before. The rest remained unsaid. Neither of us said a word as we gathered our thoughts." "Chris, she loves you. You know that, don't you?" I nodded in agreement. "I love her too. That's why the divorce is going to be so hard." Steve was almost screaming. "You're not serious. Are you going to divorce her? Because of this? I deserve better than a lying cheater." I groaned. "I want to call her bad, but I do not know if you can call her bad because of what she does. But it gives you the right to divorce." Silence reigned at the table for a surprisingly long time, until Steve asked, "Chris, what are you going to do with the video?" "Well, I don't want to ruin Lori's life." Suddenly, I felt dead tired and wanted only one thing: to leave the bar. "Steve, I'm going because I'm flying home early tomorrow morning. Lori flew to Philadelphia this morning and will be back home tomorrow afternoon. Then we'll talk to her." I looked into Steve's eyes. "Don't you dare say a fucking word to Lori, you sick piece of shit. I'll find out if you do, and I'll send these videos to everyone you know." I swallowed the last sip of whiskey, slammed the glass down on the table, and went to my hotel. "Chris, as newcomers to the empty nest, Lori and I promised each other to spend 2 weeks of vacation together every year. We planned to fly to Vancouver for the upcoming fall holidays and looked forward to eating and drinking on the way south while driving along the Pacific coast to San Francisco, with stops in Seattle and Portland along the way. It was Friday, and I had just booked a car for our vacation and also arranged for a first-class flight to Vancouver and home from San Francisco. When I was booking a hotel room, I discovered the first hints of Lori's affair. Lori and I were traveling on business. We have got into the habit of using the accumulated airline bonus miles to buy plane tickets, hotel room points, and car rental points during the holidays. Bonus points were one of the few benefits of business travel, and they covered our vacation expenses. We always had enough points for each previous vacation to cover these expenses, but I was surprised when I calculated that in the upcoming one we would have to pay for 3 or 4 nights at the hotel. And it didn't make any sense. My travels lasted exactly 120 nights, and I assumed that Lori was away for her usual 75 nights. That would easily have been enough for 12 nights at Marriott hotels while we were driving along the Pacific coast. Since each of us traveled frequently, Lori and I decided it would be wise to share our account information in case of an emergency while the other was traveling. We gave each other access to our calendars, bank accounts, credit cards, and other personal online information because we loved each other and trusted each other. We had no secrets. After I opened Lori's calendar and looked at her last year's itinerary, I made sure that she was gone for 72 nights. Then I logged into her Marriott account and found that she had spent only 51 nights at the hotel. A lump formed in my stomach as I wondered where Lori had spent the other 21 nights. By comparing her calendar with data from her Marriott account, I was able to determine that she did not book any hotel rooms when she visited her corporate office in Charlotte. The knot in my stomach tightened even more, and I thought I was going to throw up for the first time in almost 28 years of marriage. I wondered if Lori was having an affair. I was a person of linear thinking and was not afraid to face an unpleasant situation. However, I was not ready to continue the investigation. Instead, I informed my personal assistant of my intentions and left the office. And I need to go to the gym for my morning workout. I changed my clothes in our company's locker room, ran 3 kilometers to the nearest gym, lifted weights for 45 minutes, and then returned to work. After a quick shower and changing clothes, I walked past and on my way back to my office. Chris, you need to call back on several phones. And there are some personal questions. I need an hour or so to sort things out. Is this the reason why you went to the gym so early? When I nodded in the affirmative, she continued. Chris, is there anything I can do? When I shook my head as I walked past her and closed the door to my office, I assumed that and was surprised by the level of my sadness. All the tension immediately returned when I sat down at my desk. And when my phone rang a second later, I was furious. And I just said I need an hour. I'm sorry. Jim wants to talk to you. He asked me to interrupt you. Jim and I have been friends and colleagues throughout my career. He is the president of the company and the son of its founder. I followed him up the corporate ladder and became his right-hand man and vice president of sales and marketing. I sighed. I'm sorry I yelled at you and put him through. After I answered, Jim asked, What's going on? Why aren't you answering your phone? I need an hour, Jim. Can I come by your place at 11:30? It won't work. I'm calling an urgent meeting on the Watson I situation. I need your opinion. I was angry, really angry, and I felt like I was about to explode when I begged him. Jim, please give me until 11:30. I need to sort out the problem. There was a tense silence on the other end of the line, and then Jim coldly confirmed his agreement. I'll see you at 11:30. I continued my investigation, feeling my insides tighten. Each of our companies used the same software to compile online expense reports, so I opened Lori's account and looked at all the travel expense reports available to her for 24 months. Lori made the vast majority of her trips east of the Mississippi. About a third of her business trips were to her company's headquarters in Charlotte, and the rest were to other cities. According to Lori's expense reports, the cost of staying at the Marriott Hotel was deducted from her American Express corporate card for all trips. 8 months ago, at that time, the hotel fee was charged for all trips except the trip to Charlotte. After reviewing the information for the second time, I thought to myself, this can't be happening. My world was falling apart. Then, just as quickly, a simple explanation came to me. I actually laughed with relief and scolded myself for thinking so badly of my best friend, my wife. Many companies were forced to save money. In an effort to control the living expenses of employees traveling to corporate headquarters, some companies directly paid for hotel stays at a discounted rate and saved points so that they could be used for future employee trips. I thought, that must be what happened to Lori's hotel. I thought about it for a few minutes and then opened the contacts file on my computer. I was looking for the name of the guy from Lori's financial group. I had 46 contact names of people I had met while working at Lori's. Finally, I found the number of Sam Jennings, CFO, dialed his number, and left a voice message. Sam, this is Chris Harrington, Lori's husband. We met a couple of times at company events. I'm calling finance specialists from different companies to find out if companies are changing their policies to save a few dollars by paying directly for hotel stays. Our finance department is considering this change, but I am against it because I want my employees to be able to use the hotel's points. I would appreciate it if you would call me back. I left my work number and then slowly headed to Jim's office for our meeting. When the meeting started, Jim looked at me questioningly, but I just shrugged my shoulders. 20 minutes later, the sales, marketing, finance, and operations departments agreed on how to solve the week-long problem with the Watson brothers, one of our oldest clients. When the meeting ended, Jim sounded annoyed. Hold on, Chris. After the room was cleaned and the door was closed, Jim asked, What the hell is going on? I sighed, and Jim let me collect my thoughts. My blood pressure is below the level of a heart attack, but barely. I'm still working on some issues. Business or personal? It has nothing to do with business. Is it because of the children? I was already on edge by then, so I just shook my head and waited a few moments. It's because of Lori. An hour ago, I was sure she was having an affair. Now I feel more than stupid because I think I've figured out what the problem is. I'm just waiting for a confirmation phone call. Jim was grinning and shaking his head. You're an asshole. Lori loves you to death and would never cheat on you, so stop thinking nonsense and get the hell out of here. Anne's worried face, which she had been wearing before, broke into a smile when she saw me smiling as I walked past her desk. Welcome back to the human world, Chris. After checking to see if there were any emergency messages, I pressed the play button to restore my voicemail. Sam Jennings called me back. Hi, Chris. It's good to hear from you. We have not seriously considered the possibility of direct payment and saving bonus points yet. While I studied this option and we would save about $5,000 a year. But on the other hand, I read that it would cost us 10 times more because of the loss of reputation of employees. I agree with that. This is a bad idea. Hope this helps. When Sam was finishing the phrase, I hope this helps, the photo of Lori on my desktop flew across the room and crashed against the wall. While I was putting the computer in my briefcase, and standing in the doorway of my office, looked from the ruined photo on the floor to me and back again. And I'm taking the rest of the day off. Call me only if absolutely necessary. If Lori calls, tell her I'm in a meeting and I can't be disturbed. I crossed the threshold without waiting for an answer. Lori, it was a hard day's work. Since Friday morning started for me with Chris leaving for the office at 6:30, I found it justified to close my home office at 3:30 and go to the gym an hour earlier than usual. I felt naughty, so I chose a stepper for my cardio workout because it was positioned right in front of 3 fraternity boys who were running on treadmills. I knew that these guys were admiring my 51-year-old ass, dressed in tights, as I climbed the moving stairs, and it gave me great pleasure. Thinking about what 3 college athletes could do to me, I started daydreaming. There was no doubt that my life was exceptional, Chris, and I still made love 3 or 4 times a week. More often than not, after we broke up with the 69th pose, Chris would put me on all fours, grab my hips, and take me from behind. Its length, and especially its girth, combined with my finger when I was playing with my bump, made me blissful every time. I also thought about my upcoming trip to Charlotte. I had finished most of my preparations and knew it would be an extremely stressful time. I had meetings scheduled to start just 2 hours after I arrived in Charlotte, and I would work nonstop until I left home at noon on Friday. The only salvation would be my evenings with Steve. I would spend most of my working day in meetings, including with him, and all night in his bed. I knew it would be deliciously vicious evenings. I was happy that I finally stopped feeling guilty about my almost year-long affair with Steve. What we did together was so disgusting. I could never allow my loving husband to participate in the debauchery that I had with Steve. It was my personal vice, which satisfied an unhealthy need that I didn't even know about. I've had a wonderful life. I was proud to be a wife, mother, friend, and respected professional, but being with Steve allowed me the freedom to explore a newly discovered deep, primal need. It was a need that no one in my normal life could ever find out about. I didn't know I had such a perverted need, and I found out about it by accident. The four of us were on a business trip to Cleveland. Steve booked a room so that we could work together, after hours, preparing for upcoming meetings. We finished the preparatory work, and Steve invited us to dinner. Everyone was ready for food and drinks, but I realized that I needed another 30 minutes to finish some work for other clients. My computer was running out of battery power, so Steve left me his laptop. I finished work quickly, and then, because I wasn't particularly hungry, I went to Google on Steve's computer. I wanted to check the delivery of several items that were supposed to be delivered to our home. I entered Faye into the search bar, hoping that it would appear there FedEx.com. Instead, I was shocked to find a long line of links to sites dedicated to femdom. I was naive and didn't quite understand what female domination was, so I followed the first link. The videos were disgusting, but I watched video after video where women dominate men and humiliate them. I couldn't believe Steve was watching this. At first I was depressed, but after watching half a dozen clips, I was literally dripping with desire. I actually met with our group for a drink, but then I apologized and left. I'm sorry. I'm going to order room service for dinner. I hardly touched dinner because I opened a long series of femdom sites in my personal iPad and watched various videos. It wasn't long before my blouse was unbuttoned and I was naked from the waist down. I finally woke up from my daydreams and realized that I needed to get out of the Stairmaster. When I think about the emails I exchanged with Steve that day, about the three guys, and how I was waiting for Chris to push me that night, I needed to get home to take a shower before dinner. Chris. On Friday evening, when I got home, it was almost 7:30, and Lori was unhappy. Where the hell have you been? I replied to my loving wife. I'm sorry. I was having problems at work, and I lost track of time. I sent you half a dozen texts and left 3 messages. Why didn't you do me the favor and answer me? I'm sorry again. I turned off my phone and forgot to turn it on again. I was just happy to walk out the door and come home. By then, Lori had calmed down a bit. I've already eaten, but your dinner is probably overcooked. It won't be very tasty. I shrugged my shoulders. I'll go get some Chinese food and be back in a few minutes. As I was leaving, Lori started saying something when the door closed, but I couldn't hear what it was. When I returned, I ate in my home office and did some work that came in the afternoon, but mostly I waited until Lori went to bed. At 9:30, she appeared in the doorway of the office. Are you going to bed soon? No. I have to figure out this problem. I'm not sure how long it will take. I knew Lori wanted to say something else, but she just sighed. Good night. I waited an hour to make sure Lori was asleep before going to her office and getting her laptop. Before taking it to my office, I checked to see if the notebook was in the top center drawer of Lori's desk. Her company required monthly password changes to log into its VPN system, email system, and many other applications that she used for business. She couldn't use the same password for 12 months. So in order not to forget, she wrote down each new password in her notebook. It took no more than half an hour to find what I was looking for. All the emails were in a folder marked Steve Miller. I was most interested in business-related emails. When I looked through personal emails for several months, I was struck by the depravity and perversity of Steve and Lori. They described in detail more than 19 nights of debauchery in their filled emails, and each new detail was like a new stab in the stomach for me. The email sent 2 months ago included the URL that Steve had set up. Lori's email informed her that all their videos had been saved on this secure secret site and were password protected. Fortunately, Steve provided the password. When I opened the site, I just knew what I would see because their constant emails were full of ridiculous details. Well, I was wrong. Seeing my wife starring in every video was a nightmare, but I had proof that she was a despicable person. When I looked at my watch and saw that there were 15 minutes left until midnight, I was amazed at how confusing my life had become in the 15 hours that had passed since I tried to book a hotel room for our trip. Lori, What a miserable weekend. On Saturday, when I started my day with housework in the city, Chris was doing his usual weekly yard work. We could easily have afforded the services of a lawn mower, but Chris was proud to take care of the yard himself. We usually had lunch late, but Chris kept putting it off because he had new things to do in the yard. I was amazed when some supplies arrived from Lowe's at the end of the day. And as soon as Lowe left, Butler's nursery delivered 3 new apple trees. Chris, what does all this mean? I asked. We talked about planting more apple trees in the backyard. I also want to triple the amount of hops I grow and add 2 new varieties for my light Indian ale. When do you plan to complete all this work? Today I'm going to dig holes for trees and plant them first thing in the morning. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll build trellises for the hops and plant them next week while you're gone. I was annoyed. Are you going to spend some time with your wife this weekend? I'll be gone most of next week. You didn't offer to do anything, and I decided that you wanted to save energy for the trip. I was surprised by Chris's reaction and felt a twinge of guilt for a moment. But knowing that my secret was safe, I answered. I'm booking a table for dinner. Please be ready to leave at 6:30, an hour before our scheduled departure. I became worried when Chris came into the house and complained of back pain. Chris, is there anything I can do? No, just cancel the order. We can order pizza instead. I wanted to please my husband, so I did as he asked. I ordered a pizza and went to get it, as well as one of his favorite beers, Indian Pale Ale, from a local brewery. I couldn't believe what I found when I came back with pizza and beer. Chris was in bed and fast asleep. Sunday was no better. I was hoping to hear the famous morning delight from Chris, but he got up early, an hour before I woke up, and was in the yard doing his projects before I got out of bed. I complained all day, but he kept working. Speaking of disappointments, that evening, he worked in the backyard until almost 7:30, returned home, ate a tuna and salad sandwich, and 45 minutes later he was snoring. Ugh! On Monday morning, I was upset again. When the alarm went off, I immediately rolled over to lie down next to Chris, but was stunned again. The bed was empty. I jumped out of bed, put on a bathrobe, and went to look for Chris, but he was gone. He just replied to my message after almost 20 minutes. Chris, I'm at work. I thought Chris might be mad at me, but I couldn't remember what I'd done wrong. I also thought about what we didn't have on the weekend. I couldn't remember a single time. Never. So that we don't have at least twice over the weekend. I decided to launch the operation, take my hubby, and texted him. Lori, I can't wait to drink your liquid tonight. An hour later, having received no reply, I texted him again. By the middle of the day, I was fuming because I couldn't figure out why he wasn't answering. Sometimes our best moment happened after texting dirty during the working day. I tried again. Lori, you want to eat me for dinner? I was stunned by his response. Chris, I'm sorry, I'm going to be working late today. I called him 3 times over the next half hour, but each time the voicemail went on. As a last resort, I texted Chris again. Lori, I'm leaving tomorrow morning for a 4-day trip. I'll be waiting for you at home no later than 6 o'clock. My emotions were in turmoil. I knew that I would still be angry about the way I had been treated in the last few days, so I doubted what we would have after Chris returned home. I decided to take out all my frustration on Steve, so I emailed him some very specific instructions. I knew that my words would infuriate him, and our week together would be the best. I was approaching the status of a devil because it had already been 6:30 and Chris had not called, texted, or responded to my requests in any way. I was thinking, well, to hell with it. After having dinner alone, I finished packing for the week and took my briefcase and suitcase to the car. I turned on the TV and became angrier and angrier with each new series, until finally I decided to go to bed. The next morning, Chris received a cold, emotionless response from me. Chris, I was relieved when Lori fell asleep when I got home. I wasn't afraid of her anger. In fact, I was looking forward not only to meeting him face to face, but also to completely subjugating and destroying her in the coming days. It was a very long day at work. I arrived early and stayed late because I didn't want to stay at work just because I had a 2-hour meeting with my newly hired divorce lawyer. My friend Vanessa gave me a long list of things to do while Lori was away. We discussed hiring a private investigator, but decided that there would be plenty of obscene videos that I copied. I climbed into bed, as I suspected, for the last time, with my wife and fell asleep almost immediately. Because I am a light sleeper by nature, I woke up on Tuesday morning an hour and a half before our alarm went off. I took a shower, got dressed, and went to work. I was excited on the way to the office, but I smiled when the first message from Lori came. I felt steam coming off my phone. Lori, I do not know why you treat me so badly, but it is unbearable. You didn't come home for dinner like I asked, you didn't wake me up when you got into bed, and you left without kissing me goodbye. You know I'll be gone for 4 days. We'll need to have a serious talk when I get back on Friday night. In an hour. Lori, at least I expected. I'm sorry. Have a good week. What's going on with you, Chris? In between work meetings, client calls, and emails, I also did most of the divorce prep work. I had a list of our shared accounts so I could pay and cancel credit cards and other debts on Thursday, and then we would split whatever was left. Since the house belonged to me before I met Lori, I kept it for myself. Apart from a small second mortgage, the house was completely mine. I hired movers to help me sort out Lori's personal belongings so that I could take everything to her parents' garage on Thursday. The locks in the house were replaced, my children were listed as beneficiaries in my insurance policies, and my will and other legal documents were updated to not include Lori. I spent a pleasant Tuesday evening planting hops in my backyard garden. It would take 2 years for the plants to reach maturity and begin to bear fruit. I had a late dinner, went to bed, and fell asleep at 9:30. When I woke up early Wednesday morning, I turned on my phone and saw a series of messages from Lori from the previous evening. Lori, today, for the first time since we met, you didn't call while I was away. Please call me. It can't go on like this anymore. We need to talk. The second message arrived an hour after the first one. Lori, I'm begging you. Please call me. And finally, Lori, don't shut me out. Please tell me what's going on. I love you. I love you. I thought to myself, if she wants to know, I think it's time to tell her. Chris, Steve Miller. That's what's wrong. Lori, when I read Steve Miller, that's what's wrong. I was seized with fear, but it quickly passed when I realized that Chris could not possibly know about the depth of my novel. Because of his strange behavior over the weekend, I decided to hedge my bets and rented a room at the Marriott Hotel while I was in Charlotte. Although I was stressed out and wanted the release that only Steve could give me, it was not worth jeopardizing my marriage. My further adventures could wait until my next trip to our headquarters next month. I dialed Chris's number and was pleasantly surprised when he answered. Good morning, Chris. I don't understand. What does Steve have to do with your mistreatment of me? Chris sounded tired and maybe angry when he answered. If you don't understand that your relationship with Steve is completely unacceptable, I do not know what to tell you. Unacceptable? Chris, Steve is my colleague. We communicate with each other several times a day. I know you're doing this. Chris didn't continue, so I intervened. If you're talking about our dinners together, I'll be upset. I know you have business dinners with women all the time, but it's never upset me. I've never cared about your dinners with Steve or anyone else. Then why did you tell me that Steve was the reason for your behavior? My behavior changed when I found out about your affair with Steve. My novel? Are you crazy? I've never had an affair with Steve or anyone else. Are you saying that you and Steve have never had a relationship? For God's sake. Of course. That's exactly what I'm saying. I've never cheated on you, honey. I heard Chris sobbing, which broke my already aching heart, and pleading. Swear to me, Lori. Swear to me that you've never had an affair with Steve. Of course I swear to you. I swear that I never have. By no means. There was no relationship with Steve Miller or anyone else. It was very quiet on the phone. Chris, are we okay? It took him a few seconds to respond. Yes, Lori. Everything is fine with us. I have to go because we have an early meeting. Let's talk tonight and put last week behind us. I love you. Have a nice day. Chris ended his speech with the usual, I love you too. I was sweating and my heart was beating hard when I hung up the phone. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why Chris thought I was having an affair. My only thought was that someone at work might have thought that Steve and I were too close or had dinner together too often. Maybe they told Chris. Realizing that I had just escaped punishment, I vowed to limit my time with Steve after work. I will never spend the night at his house again and will limit myself to one dinner with him on every second visit. Chris. A few seconds after Lori hung up the phone, telling me lies after lies, I started opening the cloud-based website used to store their videos and found 3 of my favorite clips about their activities. Within 5 minutes of the end of the conversation, the video clips were uploaded to Lori's Facebook page, and her password was changed. In the first video, Lori was wearing a leather bodysuit with cutouts. Steve was naked and his hands were tied behind his back. He was kneeling on the wooden floor with his head on the floor and his ass in the air. In the video, Lori could be heard calling Steve a worthless piece of shit and other derogatory words while she whipped his ass with a whip. Towards the end of the short clip, scars became visible on his ass. In the second video, a naked couple unconventionally made love. The third video, my favorite, was shot in his backyard. I was wondering how many of Lori's 1,380 Facebook friends would see her in action. Lori, I left my hotel room and met my colleague in the lobby of the hotel. Because of the conversation with Chris, I was out of schedule. Mallory was my friend, and most people would describe her as prim and correct, so I was stunned when she asked, "What the hell is going on? What do you mean? With your Facebook page? Those horrible, disgusting videos with Steve." "Mallory, what are you talking about?" Mallory stared at me for quite a long time. "Come with me, Lori. Right now." Mallory literally dragged me into a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, took out her laptop, and turned it on. She typed in a few commands, and when I looked, I saw that she was on my Facebook page. Mallory turned on a video that I didn't recognize, and within the next few seconds, my world exploded. "Chris." Less than 10 minutes after I posted these 3 video clips on Lori's Facebook page, my son, Matthew, called first. I replied, "Hello, buddy." Matt answered uncertainly, "Dad." "Something strange is happening with my mom's Facebook account." I tried to call her, but my call went straight to voicemail. I interrupted him. "I know, Matt. I have my mom's passwords and I posted a video." "Oh shit, Dad. It's cruel. I think Mom will delete the post pretty quickly. It won't be easy to do." "What do you mean, Dad?" "After I posted the video, I changed your mom's password. She can't access her page. You're going to divorce her. Isn't that right, Dad?" Just recently, I gave her a last chance to tell me the truth, but she lied. So, yes, I will file for divorce. Can I ask you a couple of favors? Of course, Dad. Probably. Call your sister. Tell her not to watch the video, and tell her what's going on. And call your mom. She needs support. I'll do it, Dad. A few moments later. What a mess. "I love you, Dad." Shortly before noon, I had an unexpected guest at work. I met Joe, Lori's father, in the waiting room and escorted him back to my office. "Chris, this is a real mess." I laughed. Those were Matt's words, almost verbatim. "My God, has Matt seen these videos?" Joe was almost in shock when he continued. "Not only did her mother and I see them, but also her children?" There was silence for a few seconds. I don't know much about Facebook, but Lori told her mother that she couldn't access her account, so she couldn't delete the video. Obviously, her password has been changed. There was a plea in his eyes. "Chris, I would consider it a personal favor if you would remove the video from Facebook. I've always liked Joe and considered both of my relatives friends, so I opened Lori's page and deleted 3 files from Facebook in a few moments. When I finished, I looked at Joe. "Can Lori stay with you when she gets back? I know we're going to need to talk, but I'm still on edge and I need some time." Joe nodded in agreement even before I finished. "Of course. In fact, it's probably for the best." After a few moments, he asked, "Do you have some kind longer-term plans?" "Yes, Joe, there is, and I think you know me well enough to understand what I have to do." There were tears in Joe's eyes when he confessed. "Yes, I would divorce her too." What a horror. Our meeting took place on Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after Lori's return. When we talked on the phone once, she begged, "Please, Chris, let's meet and talk." "We'll do that, but I need to be alone first." Lori continued to beg me to talk, bombarding me with phone calls, emails, and text messages, as well as engaging our children, families, and friends. Finally, in the middle of the second week, I texted her, "Chris, meet me on the backyard patio at noon on Saturday so we can talk." She sent an endless number of replies thanking me for meeting her and promising that she still loves me and wants to repair the damage done to our relationship. I've looked at every message, but I haven't sent a single reply. Before Lori arrived on Saturday, I went to Bernie's Deli and bought a Cobb salad for her and a turkey for myself. I thought about getting a six-pack of beer for myself and a bottle of wine for Lori, but decided that alcohol wouldn't help the conversation. Seltzer with lime was perfect. I set the dining table in the backyard and was waiting for Lori when the doorbell rang at noon, but I didn't get up from my seat. Sometime later, after the third call, I saw Lori coming around the corner of the garage. She saw me, came towards me, and said her first words standing, staring at me, with her hands on her hips. "At least you could greet me at the front door. At least you wouldn't have to be lying." Admittedly, my answer was thoughtless, but I found it justified and continued. "We can continue to taunt each other with barbs or talk." I gestured at the table setting with her salad. After Lori sat down, we sat in awkward silence, gathering our thoughts. "Chris, I've been trying to think of something to say that would help you forgive me, but I can't think of anything. I need your help." Believe it or not, Lori, I was thinking the same thing. I decided you had nothing to say. "But Chris, think about our family. It will be destroyed." "Don't put this on me, Lori. You should have thought about that before you started getting slutty. I didn't ask for it, and I don't deserve it. I'm just cleaning up the shit after you. I know it's corny, but it's never been about love. It was easy. I do not know what it was. I'm so ashamed." 8 months later, Lori and I divorced. We still see each other sometimes when we get together at one of the children's homes. We're friends, and I suspect Lori still wants more, but that's not going to happen. Every time I feel sympathy for Lori, I remember the video of her leaning over Steve's dining table with his face between her buttocks as she screamed, "Use your tongue instead of toilet paper and clean my ass." No, there's nothing you can do about it. End.